It's been 6 years since the release of the King of Fighters 14. In that time, many games have come and went, but now SNK is returning to their flagship franchise. KOF 14 wasn't a perfect game. It had its fair share of issues, although at its core, 14 is a solid game. Graphics aside, of course. Does KOF 15 learn from its mistakes? Or is it just 14 2.0? Does the King of Fighters 15 shatter all expectations? The King of Fighters 15 is the 15th mainline King of Fighters game. It's a direct sequel to 14 and is the second part of the Shun'ei saga. KOF 15 has a roster of 39 characters, mostly consisting of fan favorites like Chizuru and Chris, while introducing two brand new characters to the franchise, Dolores and Isla. KOF 15 has 11 less characters than KOF 14, but aside from major characters like Kim and Vice being cut, I feel like the roster is much better overall. KOF 14 had a lot of newcomers, but that came with the drawback of lacking representation from KOF's many eras. For example, there were no Ash Saga characters in 14's initial release. 15 fixes this by making the roster cater to every kind of KOF fan, from 1994 to 2022, and with DLC on the horizon, 15 could easily have one of, if not the greatest rosters in KOF history. The biggest problem KOF 14 faced was the graphics. When making KOF 14, saying that SNK was inexperienced with making 3D graphics would be like saying Daimon is kinda top tier in 98. Despite what people say, graphics do matter, and the stigma of 14 looking like a PS2 game will follow it forever. This didn't really hit me until I played 15 because the graphics are such a step up, it's night and day. The characters look like they should, and very rarely does the game hit the uncanny valley that 14 practically lived in. Although, it's not all perfect. The effects in general look strange, and I really have no idea what they were going for. These abstract visuals worked for Samurai Showdown with its weapon-based combat, but when you apply the same effects to Power Geyser, it looks like Terry is shooting them with orange juice, and it feels cheap. The most important part of any fighting game is the gameplay. KOF 15 isn't trying to shake up the KOF formula. It builds on top of the solid foundation left by 14 while addressing that game's more egregious issues. Quick Max was the biggest issue in 14. The core gameplay revolved around it, and it was so good in fact that there was no reason to use any other offensive metered options. KOF 15 fixes this by making the cost of going into max mode more expensive, with the timer being reduced significantly when used in a combo. Raw max mode has been buffed to compensate, and EX moves have been given a big change as well. They can now be used freely like in KOF 13, making damage much easier to get and adding tools outside of combos. It really adds a lot more variety than I expected, and I'll admit, I was anti-EX moves in KOF, but 15 made me come around to them. The last new gameplay mechanic is Shatter Strike, an armored attack that can be used in combos or as a defensive tool. It's simple, but effective. Although, I can't really tell you how good or useful it is right now, only time will tell. Like I said in the beginning, 15 isn't trying to turn the gameplay of KOF on its head. It's making meaningful tweaks to make it more enjoyable and accessible while not compromising on what makes KOF KOF. The core gameplay is still here, and 15's system complements it well, making it one of the best feeling KOF games I've played. The elephant in the room for every fighter nowadays, the burning question that requires a definitive answer if you're even thinking about your game being successful is, how is the netcode? The answer? Very good. After Samurai Showdown's less than stellar netcode, I was worried. Needless to say, those fears have been squashed, and in the many games I've played, I rarely had issues, although right now the PC version is a little bit buggy. To get the best experience, you should be using a wired connection. Outside of netcode, the lobbies are a major step down from 14. In 14, you could have multiple people fighting simultaneously in one lobby, but in 15, lobbies are strictly King of the Hill style, meaning everyone will have to wait their turn, which is disappointing, but I guess that's just the price you have to pay for good online. A big emphasis in the marketing for this game was the story mode. Apparently it was so important, SNK themselves put out a spoiler warning before the game came out, and I honestly don't know why. There is nothing new here. It's your standard arcade mode, and I'm not disappointed because I wasn't expecting much, but that doesn't mean it's acceptable. And lack of single player content is a problem that the fighting genre has, but that doesn't mean KOF just gets a pass. Additionally, you've got tutorial, which is barely passable, combo trials, which are just way too short, and some miscellaneous modes with, of course, versus mode. The single player offerings are weak. If you aren't going to be playing online or with friends, I would strongly advise you wait for a price drop. 6 years ago, I played KOF 14 on release. It's the game that made me fall in love with the KOF series. Now, I'm yet again playing another brand new KOF, and despite the few changes made, somehow SNK made a game that eclipses its predecessor in almost every way. The combat is fast and responsive, and it doesn't dumb itself down to fit in with the modern fighting game crowd. When you play KOF 15, you get 4 jumps, you get max mode cancels, you get a huge roster, and you get KOF. Nothing more, nothing less, with no compromises. Which is something that can't be said for most modern fighters out on the market right now. You are dealing with the king of fighters, after all. KOF 15 is everything I wanted in a sequel to KOF 14, and I can say, with full confidence, the King of Fighters 15 shatters all expectations. So go out there and play some KOF. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Drzuul. Have a great day, and goodbye.